Welcome! This series of lessons begins, as all lessons do, with a premise, a foundational principle or proposition, and these lessons are no different. Yet, they are different in that you must participate to discover what the reasons are for the principles and propositions that I will be presenting. Far too often, religious teachers with good intentions tell people what to believe instead of encouraging the questioning of conclusions that are being put forth. The seeker of important information asks and answers questions as they pursue meanings to things they value. This series is designed with that in mind. You guide the lessons by asking those important questions as prompted by the framework provided. Your responses are of great worth to me, as I desire to answer the questions not from my wisdom, but from a biblical perspective. In so doing, we both become engaged in examining the truly exciting questions of life. So then, if I make a statement that prompts a thought, or something is said that is unclear, or you believe I have stated an error, feel free to say so. Now, let us begin. A starting point. Welcome, seekers. The thing that we want to start with is the thing that's common to everyone. We, no matter what position we might hold, all agree that we are born and we will die. What's in between is a part of the conversation, as well as what happens when you die. Mankind asks himself three fundamental questions. Where did we come from? What are we here for? And where are we going? The answers to these three questions form a person's worldview. A worldview is a belief system that explains the way you live. If I could spend a few minutes with you and ask you some very direct questions, and you were honest with your answers, I could determine a great deal about you just by the way you answered the questions, because that determines deep down the core belief system that you hold and that I hold, and it explains the reasons why we live the way we do. Now, given that, we want to investigate the questions one at a time and begin with the beginning. But before we do that, I'd like to make a point concerning words. Faith, I will be using interchangeably with the worldview term. Faith in the English Oxford Dictionary is to have a complete trust or confidence in someone or something. You can see the synonyms there that you're familiar with. A worldview and a faith system are fundamentally the same. Everyone has faith, and people have faith in different degrees, and we'll explore that in a later lesson. But I think simplicity demands that we use simple words. And faith is a simple word, direct word, and that's what we're going to slowly incorporate into our vocabulary. So, back to our questions. Where did I come from? We have many sources that propose an answer to that question. You've already been exposed to them, no matter what your age, your culture, your media, your education, your family, all kinds of things, your own personal experience. You've begun to log those pieces of information away and made decisions. I call them your park bench moments. As we said, where we contemplate the deeper things of life. Let's look at some of the sources or some of the answers that some have proposed. Probably one of the largest of our time is the theory of evolution, the Big Bang Theory. Secondly, with a very large population in the Asian world, Hinduism and Buddhism tries to give us an answer to where we came from. Likewise, Islam in the Middle East as its origin also has an answer. More modern group, the Mormons. And you say, well, why have I chosen those? Those groups have material written down, in most cases, you can examine. oral transmission, conversations, while they have some relevancy at the moment, oftentimes over time get distorted. So if we're going to do a logical, objective study, we need to look at something that's written down. And so if you have questions about any of those, please feel free to ask. But finally, the idea is that in all of these cases, in one form or another, they're claiming to have the answer. Whether it's a God of some sort of a deity concept, or a God meaning man is the highest on the food chain, nonetheless, all four of these different positions give us an answer. Whether it's true or not is yet to be seen. So, as we continue our examination, this is where I make a break. I've done my homework. I've looked at these others, not just because I was born in the Western world, but because I did an honest evaluation, and these groups have some major flaws, and I have rejected their answers. But you may want to pursue them, and I am more than excited to do just that. But for our purposes, we have accepted the Bible as the absolute truth of God. The absolute, not the relative truth, the absolute truth. And how I came to that conclusion, too, was not simply because my mother told me, or my teacher told me, or any other source singularly. At some point, I investigated the question, and Bible came up on top in all kinds of categories. And there, too, I would like to explore or give you some direction as to how you might be able to build your confidence in this book that we call the Bible. So, our worldview, as you can see, can get rather complicated. But it does, at the end, give us clarity as to what we do believe. So through a series of questions and answers, we were able to navigate the Big Bang Theory. When we start with a conversation that says God exists, that's where the evolutionist gets off the boat. They reject the idea that God exists, and that is what we usually refer to as an atheist. They don't believe in the existence of God whatsoever. Now, there's a couple of middle roaders. There is the apathist who doesn't care. There's no point in having a conversation with someone who doesn't care. I don't want to waste their time or my time. There is the agnostic who says, I don't know because I don't think you can know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but you can't know. I don't have time for that either. If you can't know something, what's the point of investigating it at all? And of course, in our case, that is, in this series of lessons, we believe that God exists. Now, for some, the question goes one step further, for they believe in more than one God, and we will deal with that at the appropriate time. So, we have the situation where we're answering these three questions from the perspective of the Bible. Those answers then begin to formulate my faith. And while it is true that I'm not always consistent with what I say I believe, it is nonetheless what I believe to be true. And the more that I implement it, the more likely I am to reap the results that it proposes. So, this is our starting point. 3 questions, 1 book, that formulates your faith. Are there any objections to the proposition so far? Or maybe you just have a follow-up question. Just go ahead and say it, or ask a question. Then I might explain it with more detail. Very soon you will see on your screen the opportunity where you might write in and request a copy of this presentation and propose your questions. And until that time, remember, we're about seeking the seeker.